Hello friends, Jeanice Mitchell, pelvic health physical therapist, and today we're going to talk about 8 tips to help improve the symptoms of pelvic organ prolapse. Just a reminder that I'm a physical therapist, but I'm not your physical therapist, and this information does not replace evaluation by a qualified healthcare provider. And be sure you get checked out if you have any of these symptoms. The first tip is internal vaginal wall canal support. So basically with pelvic organ prolapse, those organs, either the bladder, uterus, or rectum, are starting to kind of collapse into the vaginal wall, and then that wall is collapsing into the canal. And so by inserting something into the canal, you can help to support it so it stays more upright and those organs stay in their lanes. There's a variety of options out there, and I actually have, I think it's about an hour video just on this. If you'd like the link, I'll attach it here in the captions. But here are just a few options. So this is a pessary. Here's another pessary. And this is a menstrual cup that sometimes people find helpful, a C-sponge. Sometimes people find tampons helpful. This is a Contiform device, and then this is a Poise Impressa. And all of these devices would get inserted into the vaginal canal. And again, it's a very, very individual. Always follow manufacturer's guidelines, but that's one option that can give a lot of people a lot of support and help. Let's go over the anatomy first for tip number 2, which is seated cardio when needed. So here is a pretend pelvis. A pelvis is kind of like a bowl. So the bones are the outside and the floor are your muscles, the pelvic floor muscles. So this little ring here represents the bones, and this red fabric represents the pelvic floor muscles. We know one of the functions of the pelvic floor is support. They support the pelvic organs. And so watch what happens when I add a bladder to the pelvic floor. Ooh, it's kind of a very stretchy, saggy pelvic floor, but you can see that pelvic floor isn't really doing that great of a job with supporting. And then imagine if you were doing, high impact cardio where you're bouncing up and down. That bladder is really bouncing and that pelvic floor is really, really having to do a strong job of supporting. And sometimes it may just not be able to do that. So by doing seated cardio, you are supporting that pelvic floor and those pelvic organs from below. So one of my favorite positions for cardio is bike riding. I love bike riding, and that seat from below gives me a lot of nice lift and counter pressure and support. Tip number 3 is inversion. Another word for that is gravity assisted. So here we have a person, and in this position, her pelvic floor is having to hold everything up, right? And gravity is pressing down. Then if she were in this position, everything's kind of neutral, but in this position, her pelvic floor is actually on slack. And it's a lot easier to work her pelvic floor muscles in this position. And something else nice about this position is that the pelvic organs are kind of repositioned back to where they belong. So instead of the pelvic floor having to hold all that weight of the organs and the pressure of gravity, this position helps to relieve some of that pain and pressure. Is this functional? No. You can't live your life in this position. So I would use this position if you're feeling pain or pressure, especially at the end of the day. It might feel nice to just give a little lift. And also, if you're just starting out with pelvic floor muscle training, this might be a good position to try. Pelvic floor muscle training is tip number 4. So basically, pelvic floor muscle training can build strength, can build tone, can build bulk in the pelvic floor muscles, actually make those muscles thicker. Something else exciting, it can actually help to lift the position of the bladder and the rectum as well. And I will attach an article in the captions here for you to look at this fantastic article on pelvic floor muscle training and the morphological changes that happen in the body as a result of that. So in summary, your pelvic floor, we want it to correctly contract, completely let go, be active at the right times, and be relaxed at the right times. And pelvic floor muscle training can help you achieve those goals. Okay, we took a field trip to the bathroom. So tip number 5 is soft, squishy poop that slides right out. So this video isn't going to go into a lot about how to make your poop soft and squishy. There's a lot of resources, and again, I'll attach some options down there below. But just think about a squishy ripe banana, okay? So that's the consistency that you want. Oh my goodness, it's so squishy and gross, but just so that it slides right out. And then a few other tips, basically, when you're on the toilet, think about the position of your knees. So I have a squatty potty here. You can use stools, you can use several high books, but basically you want that squatting position. That helps a lot. And then I find that like blowing or saying noises like shh or grr or blowing through a straw helps you to relax your pelvic floor. Take some deep breaths and think about relaxing those muscles to allow the poop to just slide right out. Tip number 6, hip, core, and glute strengthening. So how does that actually affect prolapse? There's very, very limited to almost no research that I'm aware of that discusses the relationship between prolapse and glute strength or hip strength or your overall core strength. However, we know that the pelvic floor muscles are part of the core, and so any kind of conditioning or strengthening program would ideally include the pelvic floor and also cues for pelvic floor dysfunction. So are you having pain? Are you having leakage? Are you having pressure or prolapse? That kind of thing. There's an interesting article that was published within the last few months on the relationship between hip strength and urinary leakage. And in this study, the authors found that hip strength was critical to urinary leakage. And I'll attach the link to that article below. So basically, it makes sense to me that if you have good, strong, toned glutes and inner thighs and hips and core, that you're going to have better movement. You're going to have more controlled movement. We just can't forget the pelvic floor. So you could be strong on the outside, weak on the inside. We need everything to work together to have optimum movement. Tip number 7 is external support. And I have a whole video just on this that I'll attach below, but here's a summary. So basically, by wearing external garments or by wearing external support, you can help to give support to that pelvic floor and those pelvic organs from below. And it can feel really good and enable you to do more things that you may not be able to without it. Tip number 8, exhale when lifting. So I have a couple weights here. Let me back up so you can see me. And so what I want to do is take a deep breath in, and then I'm exhaling while I'm lifting. So deep breath in, exhale when lifting. And when you're exhaling, I want you to really think about actively engaging that pelvic floor at the same time. Is this the only way that you can lift? Of course not. There's many different ways to lift and many different ways of breathing. But I find that this is very helpful to cue and engage the pelvic floor when lifting. I hope you found these 8 tips to improve pelvic organ prolapse symptoms helpful. If you like it, then please actually like it, comment on it in the caption section, and share it. It would mean the world to me. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.